let's pop up this live image that we do have over Lebanon at this hour as a senior U.S. envoy visited Beirut Saturday amid that fragile ceasefire with Israel and pressure to rein in the Hezbollah terror group. Morgan Ortagus met with Lebanon's president, prime minister, and the speaker of parliament, emphasizing the need for the Lebanese army to assert control over all Lebanese territory. Lebanon's president describing the discussion as quote-unquote constructive. Israel, by the way, does maintain control over 5 strategic hilltops in southern Lebanon. The IDF also releasing a statement here just a short time ago. Let me pop that up for you on your screen, saying that the IDF has eliminated some terrorists there. Quote, a short time ago, an IAF, or Air Force aircraft, struck 2 Hezbollah terrorists who were operating an engineering vehicle in southern Lebanon. The terrorists were struck while attempting to rebuild Hezbollah terror infrastructure sites. Again, that statement from the Israel Defense Forces coming in a short time ago. A lot to discuss, no question here, so I do want to bring in David Daoud, senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, with a focus on Israel, Lebanon, and Hezbollah. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us as always.
Pleasure to be here, Josh. It's been a while.
It definitely has been a while. And David, I did want to start out by talking about that visit from the U.S. envoy there over to Lebanon, meeting with a lot of big names like the president, prime minister, speaker of parliament. What does all of that say about the relationship between the two? What can you gauge from that?
Well, we are a partner with Lebanon officially. We do give aid to the LAF. I think the posture of the Trump administration is to continue the traditional support that the United States has had for Lebanon and for its official institutions. This visit, I think, is there to reinforce that and also to get Lebanon to act on some of its obligations where we've seen dereliction, namely under Resolution 1701, the November 27th ceasefire with Israel. We also want to see economic reforms. We want to make sure that the investment that we're pouring into Lebanon, be it military aid or otherwise, is having the intended effect. And one of the priorities we have in Lebanon is obviously disarming Hezbollah.
In its current form, talking about disarming Hezbollah, how strong are Hezbollah's military capabilities now, let's say, than they were maybe weeks, months ago, even back in October of 2023?
Well, we're talking about a different organization fundamentally. We're talking about a very humbled and subdued organization relative to October of 2023, relative to a few months ago. The Israeli Defense Forces have said that they've destroyed something like 80% of Hezbollah's strategic arsenal, killed 30% of its fighting forces, and critically, its elite political and military cadres. We're talking about an organization that is now in the process of trying to regenerate, trying to regroup, lick its wounds, and find a path to regeneration and resurgence, one that won't happen in the near future. Now, that doesn't mean that Hezbollah is down for the count. That doesn't mean that Hezbollah is entirely inactive. You mentioned earlier an Israeli strike in South Lebanon, attacking a Hezbollah operative trying to renovate Hezbollah infrastructure in the area. We see strikes like this on an definitely a weekly basis, but sometimes on an almost daily basis throughout Lebanon. This suggests to me that Hezbollah is still active within Lebanon, still trying to regain its footing, despite the fact that it took a monumental and unprecedented drubbing from the Israelis in the war that lasted from October of 23 until November of 2024.
You and I have discussed this countless times, but I just want to explain for people out there. Can you explain really how the people of Lebanon feel about Hezbollah, the terror group there, as a whole?
Well, I think you're speaking about different Lebanons. As I've mentioned before, I would say, according to polling, the overwhelming majority of Lebanese at this point, if we're talking about all Lebanese, have an unfavorable view of Hezbollah. But that's not the critical point, because Lebanon is divided up like a sectarian pie. And Hezbollah only cares to really dominate or have control over its slice of the pie, the Shiite slice of the pie, if you will. And what we've seen, polling in September of 2024 showed that 85% of Lebanese Shiites support Hezbollah. Now, some people said that waned with the subsequent intensification of the war between Israel and Hezbollah and the destruction that brought upon the Shiite community. They bore the brunt of this. But then Hezbollah stages Nasrallah's funeral in February 23rd of 2025. And according to Information International, this is a Beirut-based consultancy company, something like 690,000 to 900,000 people attended that funeral. They mapped out the square footage. They assessed how many people could stand per square meter, rather. And they assessed that, based on footage and everything that they had available, something like 900,000 people came out. That's not an organization that has lost popularity in a country of about 4.5 million. And this ties, by the way, back into the visit of Ms. Ortega's to Lebanon, where one of the demands she's making is disarm Hezbollah. And the readouts from the meetings didn't say this explicitly, but Lebanese media outlets had said before that one of the things that Lebanese officials will tell her is that disarming Hezbollah will take time, and that it'll happen through dialogue on a national defense strategy. What this means is, because of Hezbollah's popular weight, Lebanon is still going to have to ask them to disarm and ask their permission to disarm. So Lebanon still has to take this demonstrated weight into account that the organization still has. There's some will tell you Hezbollah has bled this support, but we've seen no real indication of that. And those same people will also tell you, on the one hand, they'll tell you Hezbollah is weak and it's lost its support because it's become so weak. And on the other hand, they'll tell you people are still afraid of Hezbollah. They're too afraid to speak out. We see, for example, with Hamas in Gaza, there have been protests. There have been people, hundreds, if not thousands of people went out into the street for a specific time period and protested against Hamas. We haven't seen that with the Shiites in Lebanon. And again, people will tell you fear. But if people are still fearful of Hezbollah, it means it remains strong enough to control its environment, and it's not as weakened as some would have you believe.
I want to talk about the visit by Prime Minister Netanyahu to the White House tomorrow. Now, this is the second visit that Netanyahu has made since Trump took office back on January 20th. My question for you, what does that say about the current state of the U.S.-Israel relationship, as we know that the discussion is not just going to be about the situation in Gaza, but also about tariffs?
Well, look, the U.S.-Israel relationship is strong under either administration. I think with Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump, there's a special interpersonal relationship. Yes, it's seen its rocky points. We all have read, at least I've read, Barak Ravid's book and the comments that President Trump made about Prime Minister Netanyahu. There were moments of anger, but I think the two men have very similar outlooks, very similar personalities. It kind of makes the relationship easier to maintain. Like you said, there are critical issues in the region that both sides see mostly eye to eye on. Iran, how to deal with Iran. I think that'll definitely be on the table, especially with talk from President Trump about putting Iran on notice that they either have to make a deal or that there will be more consequences, harsher consequences. Strikes on the Houthis. This is also critical to both U.S. and Israeli interests. The Houthis continue to strike Israel on a regular basis. And as you noted, tariffs. Prior to President Trump's Liberation Day, the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu had canceled all tariffs on American goods. And instead, they were met with, I think it was 17% tariffs on Israeli goods. And I don't think this was singling out Israel in any way. This was President Trump basically having a baseline of tariffs on all countries and what he and his administration deemed fair based on specific countries. And I think that'll definitely be part of negotiations, or probably part of the discussion, rather, between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu.
It appears that Israel is expanding its ground operations once again as we discuss the situation unfolding there in Gaza. Does that essentially mean it is an all-out war again? And does that prevent discussion over another ceasefire?
I think what the Israelis have said is that negotiations for a ceasefire will occur under fire now. They noticed an intransigence, as they will put it, on behalf of Hamas, or on Hamas's part, rather, between phase 1 and phase 2 of the ceasefire negotiations. And they resumed hostilities. Look, there's the rhetoric which says we're going all the way. We're going to dismantle Hamas. This is a resumption of the war. And then there's probably a more complicated reality, which is that Israel is trying to soften up Hamas's positions, that it is trying to make Hamas pay a price for every day that it does not sign a ceasefire that is favorable to Israeli demands. There have been different pressure tactics. Obviously, the resumption of hostilities, recontrolling territory. There were even threats that that Israel would start to annex parts of Gaza. All of this is to try to maintain pressure, increase pressure on Hamas for them to demonstrate some flexibility when it comes to negotiations. Release more hostages, be more amenable to surrendering their arms and leaving the Gaza Strip, rather than having Israel have to continue to fight them until their total disarmament.
David Daoud, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us early on this Sunday morning. Anything else you want to add before I let you go?
Look, I would say that, I always say look to the north. I would say look to the north again. Hezbollah isn't done. They're still trying to make moves towards resurgence, and their regional activities remain, I don't want to say unchanged, but they remain active regionally. We saw assassinations against not just Hezbollah officials in Lebanon, but Hamas officials by the Israelis, who, the Israelis said they were planning terror attacks alongside Hezbollah abroad. So we saw one Hamas official assassinated and a Hezbollah official that was supposed to be directing these operations. So while Hezbollah may be tamed to a certain degree in its behavior in Lebanon, it is still trying to find alternate routes to continue attacking Israel and Israeli interests both in the region and abroad. So the organization is not down for the count, and I would caution against undue optimism at this point.
All right. David, thank you again for taking the time to be here with us as always. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.